Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phillip Wylie Show. Today I'm excited to be joined by Jacob Krasnov from BC Security. So we've known each other from the cybersecurity community for several years now and met for the first time at RSA back in 2022, I believe.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. 2022. Yeah, not last year.
So great to finally have you on. As I was discussing before we started the show, I've been meaning to have you on the podcast, but just never have thought to schedule, and so it's good that finally I was able to get you scheduled and that you were available. So thanks.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome what you're doing, and I can't wait to get into it. The listeners, I think, are really going to enjoy this episode. I think it's awesome that you took over the Empire project. I don't know how long ago that's been now. They were kind of not going to continue the project, and you updated the version of Python it was written in, I believe.
Yeah, that's actually how kind of BC Security got started as a whole. Like Anthony and I, also goes by Coin, had started the company to do some research just because he had actually spoken at DEF CON the year before we met, and I was really interested in doing that. And so we kind of formed like an LLC to put some like crypto mining as well as just kind of when you're doing research, protect us in case we got sued or anything like that. And we got picked up for a workshop at DEF CON, and that was the same year that the SpectreOps guys decided to stop working on Empire. And so I had made a fork for Empire for the workshop because going over how to change indicators and that kind of stuff was what the workshop was about. And it turned out that OffSec was using Empire in their training course at the time for OSCP, and they needed someone to convert it over to Python 3, so they offered to provide us some support to get started, and that was kind of what kicked us off and got our name out there for stuff because we picked it up and published it and made a bunch of updates, and now it's a completely different platform now. I'm happy to expand more on all the different features, but if people think of it as just like the traditional PowerShell Empire, it's a completely rewritten code base. We've got C# agents and IronPython agents, and Anthony's currently working on a Go implant, so it's like a totally different platform that it used to be when the SpectreOps guys stopped working on it.
Very cool. Especially nice whenever you can enhance it and not just maintain, but that's pretty awesome. So before we get too far into this show, if you wouldn't mind sharing your hacker origin story, kind of how you started out and where you are today.
So I had always kind of worked with computers a little bit. I did some hacking, if you want to call it that, back in high school where, that was the XP days where you could, get system by just setting your screensaver to being cmd.exe, and 5 minutes later you'd have a system level prompt. So we did some stuff like that to play games and stuff. I actually went into astronautical engineering when I went to college and joined the Air Force. And after my first assignment where I'd worked on doing motor modifications we'd take old ICBMs and convert them into rockets for launching small satellites. I went to a new unit. I'd been there for a little bit. I was supposed to be working on some missile testing stuff that aligned with my background. And I walked in one day and they're like, "Hey, you're a new cybersecurity person." I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, Congress just passed a law saying that all weapon systems have to undergo cybersecurity testing by 2019, regardless of what they'd previously been classified as. Because prior to that, as long as it wasn't considered an IT system, it didn't have to go through any kind of security assessment. It was just they would build an aircraft and ship it out, and it had no. It sort of had some security requirements to it, but not really. So Congress passed that. And that kind of got me into the whole thing where I got to run the first cybersecurity assessment against the F-22. I got to do some stuff with the F-15 and F-35 as well. And then from there, I went over to the 57th Information Aggressor Squadron, which is an Air Force threat emulation organization. So there's the whole 57th Wing. And if you've ever heard of Red Flag, it's kind of the Air Force's Air Force's large force exercise where everyone comes from like all over the world and does like big air battles and stuff. And we'd be red cyber during that. So we'd try to emulate like Russia or China or whoever the threat was for that exercise. And that's where I got more of my traditional cyber training, like actually learning how to like break into like, Active Directory and more Windows and those kinds of things. And then after that, I got out and went to Boeing, where I was one of the lead engineers for PhantomWorks so clean sheet airplane designs. If you ever heard of skunkworks for Lockheed Martin, PhantomWorks is Boeing's equivalent. So we were designing new aircraft that the government would hopefully purchase, and then I was responsible for designing all the security on that. And then now I'm full time at BC Security.
Very cool. That's awesome, and congrats on being able to go full time for yourself. I mean, I'm sure you're glad to be able to work on the type of projects and do the things that you want to do. Although I can imagine some of the stuff you did at Boeing was probably pretty interesting, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was super cool. I was ready to move on though. After spending nearly 10 years working in vaults with no windows, I was ready for a little bit less restrictive of a work environment for that kind of thing. So I was looking to move on from DoD stuff just because I'd kind of wanted to get out of that environment. But it was definitely interesting work. Like some of the stuff that we can talk about is like I got to work on 1553 security, which is what all the old or even newer military aircraft are built on, pretty much all military, as well as a lot of satellites. And it was a really interesting protocol to work on because there's no security built into it. It was designed in the 60s, and it was entirely based around reliability. So that you had all kinds of problems where like the protocols designed to accept any commands sent to like an endpoint. There's only one bus controller, and then everything else is an endpoint on a 1553 bus. And it's just assumed that everything is compliant with the protocol because at the time in the 60s, the idea of like something talking to the aircraft, like sending, a signal that would be on the 1553 bus from the ground or whatever was just like a, sci-fi thing that no one even considered. Mm-hmm. And so we were trying to do all kinds of research into how do we actually protect the bus while maintaining the reliability for safety of flight and all those kinds of things. So definitely interesting work.
Yeah, I bet so. So I bet your vitamin D levels are probably a lot better since
yeah, much better.
changing careers. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty interesting though when you're talking about the testing them not really it's just so funny, security in general, how 60s or 70s no one would have thought about someone hacking into things. So it's just amazing how that's affected so many things. You even look at medical devices because medical devices at one point people didn't think to secure those. Who's going to hack a pacemaker or an insulin pump? But these are very clever ways and a little better way to take someone out than someone actually using a sniper or physical attack.
Yeah, there was a really cool research paper a couple years ago. I mean, it was entirely in a lab and I think pseudo built to allow them, but they did a proof case where they made a synthetic DNA and injected malware into a DNA decoder thing. I forget what the proper name is for that for the medical device. Like injected malware by having like fake DNA in the sample that was actually like a piece of malware that got executed by the medical device. It was really cool.
Oh wow. It just can make you think of the crazy stuff that's going to happen in the future and not so distant future. Some sharp minds out there coming up with some very interesting ways of doing things. So kind of why don't you explain about BC Security, what all you guys do there? Yeah, so
I met Anthony, who I started the company with while we were in the military at that original organization I was at, or not original one, the second one I was at, where we did the testing for the cyber testing that I got converted. That was the Air Force Operational Test and Evaluation Center. So we bring one of the big things that we noticed in our military career, both while doing the AFOTech stuff and the when I moved over to doing more of the red teaming style stuff, was that there was a lot of lack of rigor in terms of test engineering. A lot of the processes that were being used for pen testing and stuff weren't repeatable. It was just kind of whoever showed up with the team that day would execute what they were good at, and good luck repeating that test to try and verify that you'd fix the problems. And so we wanted to bring a strong focus of kind of that test engineering rigor to a lot of this things that we're doing, as well as that threat emulation piece. Because the other thing that we saw a lot that was really hard for getting the important message like cybersecurity across when they were trying to convert all these aircraft to following those things was a lack of tying like cyber impacts to operational impacts. So you'd see a lot of cases where a team would come in, they'd find all these vulnerabilities, they would say the sky is falling because your laptop didn't have a proper password on that, and then when it got up to the general would look at it and be like, well, it's on an Air Force base with guards that's in a secure building that has additional guards that has like 3 locked doors, and it's in a vault. So if the password is the part that fails, I feel like that's not really relevant to our operational problems because we failed long ago. And so tying those impacts, not just from a security, like this is the proper way you should be doing things, but tying them into the day-to-day operations of how people are experiencing those impacts is a really big key to messaging, to convincing not just your IT or cyber department, but getting the CEO or the CTO on board to say like, this is why it matters. Because like a common thing that we see a lot is you go talk to some of the C-suites or VPs in an organization, and they'll tell you like, we have no idea, how cyber could impact us. We need help. We want something to do. And that's not really true. If you start asking them questions like, okay, well, what would happen to the organization if you lost email for a day? They can give you answers like that. What happens if your manufacturing line wasn't producing for 6 hours? What was the business impact to that? Same phone lines. So they understand the impacts. They just don't understand how the vulnerabilities and problems within the cyber world transition over to those real world impacts for them. So we try to help focus that kind of crossover to make it easier for the non-tech people to understand what's going on and communicate that problem better and get people more involved within cyber.
Very good. That's one of the things I know a lot of times as technical folks, we don't think about the terminology that, the CISO or the board understand. And sometimes, whatever vulnerability doesn't really translate to them, but if you can explain it in terms that they understand, the better off it is for both parties. So as far as Empire, so if you could kind of tell us about the Empire project, kind of what you took it from and kind of the enhancements you've made to it.
Yeah, so Empire obviously got us our name out there, but we started working on it because, like I said, I'd been using it for a workshop and a pen test I'd been doing that year and liked the platform. Then it stopped being supported, and we started doing it, and it was we really liked the platform and wanted to keep it up to date. So there's a bunch of changes that have been driven into it. One is we brought the third business partner on, who's Vincent Rose, Anthony's brother, who's an actual software engineer. So he did a ton of work that is not the glory work of making cool new modules and stuff, but actually rewriting the entire code base to take it from a bunch of hackers that wrote something that works, but is not necessarily maintainable, to making it this much more sleek and maintainable and upgradable code base, so that it'll be a lot easier to keep around for years to come. Because unfortunately, one of the problems that we see within the offensive tool community is we see all these cool tools that are published, and then they kind of get left behind after a year or two for the next new tool, and they're not supported, and it makes it hard for a research standpoint to have to constantly move tools and understand the impacts of that. Again, getting back to that repeatability thing. But B, it also makes it very fractured for where certain TTPs or capabilities are located within the community. Because there's tools that used to do things that were really cool that got dropped and were no longer maintained because the maintainer moved on to another project. And then no one really built a tool that could do that thing for many years until someone finally was like, okay, I'm going to rebuild this tool and rewrite the entire code base in a new language or an updated language, if it was in Python 2.7 and now we're at 3.11 or whatever it is. So we really wanted a tool that was going to be around for a long time. So we brought Vincent in to do that. The other thing that we are really passionate about with Empire is enabling lower costs for teams to get involved. While lots of our teams within the U.S. are super well funded and can afford to go get a Cobalt Strike license at what is it, $7,000 or $8,000 a seat now per year. There's teams out in Asia or Africa or even like Eastern Europe where the license cost for Cobalt Strike is their entire team's budget to including like salaries and stuff for the year. So those people are very interested in being able to protect their environments and their businesses, but we have to enable them to be able to use those tools. And then also we just wanted a tool that could be used for training, whether that's at colleges or try hack me or whatever. We wanted a tool that enables people to learn and grow.
Yeah, that's kind of nice to have something like that, a tool that is within people's budgets, because you'd go take training and you get trained on Cobalt Strike, but you can't afford it. You're not going to use it. It's almost a waste of time to learn the tool. So if you got something that's free, open source, or less expensive, then it sure makes it a lot nicer for people to be able to learn those tools. And I would imagine be more willing to have people to help out from the community, create modules and add-ons and stuff, I would think.
Yeah, and then just to highlight it, that doesn't mean that the tool is not advanced. I feel like sometimes that's the other thing that we struggle with a little bit with the Empire tool, is that people view it as like, oh, PowerShell's dead, we're not doing, which is a whole nother conversation to have. But, it's a tool from 10 years ago, so like I want to use the newest tool. And that problem is actually one of the reasons that we see tools get dropped all the time and not have long-term support, because if we had made an entire new platform that had like IronPython agents in it and we just built an entire IronPython C2, we would have gotten way more like visibility and response from people when we published that IronPython update than just saying, hey, Empire now has IronPython agents. And you talk to people and they don't even know that Empire has a C# agent, which we did like 5 or 6 years ago now. And so trying to get people's perception to match that just because it's a tool used in entry-level training doesn't mean that it's not a tool that supports a lot of those advanced TTPs if you want it to, is one of the struggles that we have with the project right now.
Yeah. So how's the project doing as far as visibility and people realizing is out there? Does it still seem people still realize that it's an option?
APTs do, which is the unfortunate part of it. We still see a lot of use of Empire in the wild. So it's definitely not being dropped from the use perspective of people thinking it can't be used at all. And we do still see a number of students using it. A lot of colleges are still teaching it. But I think if you get to like the mid-career level offensive security person, there's not a lot of visibility for them. They've all moved on to Sliver or Mythic or Cobalt Strike if their team's paying for it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I would assume you're probably listed in the C2 matrix.
Yeah, we've been in the C2 matrix for a while.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So what's the learning curve on Empire compared to some of the other C2s?
So we've tried to make it as easy as possible. That doesn't mean that it's always the most the easiest, because I've been working with the tool for 8 years now and helping write it, so things that are very second nature. But it should be relatively low. There's tons of training out there. Like TryHackMe has free training that you can get spun up on it. There's tons of YouTube videos. We're teaching actually a free workshop at DEF CON this year that we've taught last year and we've done as a webinar a couple of times, which is just an intro, like nothing, like how do you show up and do like the git pull to even download the project, and then install it and go through your first agent and all those kinds of things. And then there's also more advanced training, like we offer an on-demand course now that will walk you through the beginning of setting up and running Empire all the way through like executing beacon object files and like more advanced TTPs, doing evasion stuff to the platform to make it more unique to your team, so that like just the base level signatures aren't getting you caught and all that kind of stuff. So it runs the full gambit, and I think it's one of the easier open source projects to get installed, for sure. A lot of the open source projects are written from a standpoint of like what works for the team that developed it, which is like totally fine. It makes sense, right? If you're working at a pen testing firm and you built an entire tool, it makes sense that you built it for your workflow. But when it gets outside of that workflow, it doesn't always make an easy transition for people that aren't used to that workflow. So I think it's one of the easier open source tools out there.
So since you guys do training, if someone's wanting to learn to be a pen tester or red teamer, what do you recommend education-wise?
So I think getting started with Try Hack Me is a really good place to start. I think there's a lot of people that are interested in red teaming because they've seen it or heard about it or been told it's a really good job opportunity, and that work may not always be what is most interesting to them, especially when when you start getting into more of the divisions of the OffSec stuff, like someone that's really interested in reverse engineering. Malware probably doesn't want to be a pen tester because it's a totally different job type of thing. So do some of that free training up front to just figure out what area of OffSec you want to be in is like a good start before you start investing a lot of money. And then I'm obviously biased, a big fan of some of our intro stuff. We have an entire series of Empire Ops courses that we teach that are all intro stuff, and it all uses Empire as our instruction platform, but it's all concepts that are applicable to like any of the platforms. We really try to focus on making our stuff more applicable than just like our ecosystem. And then CRTO is always a interesting one to give Rasta Mouse a shout out. I really like his instruction platform. And then I'm trying to think of if there's any. I'm sure I will remember someone else after I think about it for a few minutes. But I'm not coming up with anything off the top of my head at the moment.
So something I usually ask people, because this question comes up a lot: do people need to know how to code if they're wanting to be a pen tester or red teamer?
To get started in it, you don't need to know how to code. You can totally pick up a OffSec tool that's from GitHub and start learning the basics of how to do, like, write an implant or use that tool to create like a phishing email or do password spraying and all those concepts that are core to security and the vulnerabilities that we attack as pen testers. But you don't need to know coding to start. You can actually make it fairly far in the industry in terms of like the beginning of your career without having to know how to code. But if you ever want to make that jump over to like being a senior red team leader or a tool developer, then obviously you need to start learning that code. And I think inevitably you'll start picking up some scripting stuff, because even if you don't like use Cobalt Strike, which is the top tier end of like graphical user interfaces, and a lot of stuff's like point and click, they still have all the like attacker scripts and all those kinds of things that may not be like true coding, but are still scripting, and you'll start picking up those concepts along the way. And then if you ever want to do exploit development, then yeah, you have to know how to code to be able to find vulnerabilities within code itself, like if you want to do bug hunting and that kind of stuff.
For someone starting to code these days, what would you recommend?
I'm a big fan of Python. I think it's really good. I would, because it still does have all of the kind of object-oriented principles within it, where you have classes and inheritance and all that stuff that's really important. I still think it would be good to eventually learn a strongly typed language, whether that's like C++ if you really want to go deep in the weeds, or C# or Java or something like that, although Java's gotten a lot less, there's less reliance on Java nowadays. But I still think that like a strongly typed language teaches you a lot of good habits about scripting and coding, even if the language doesn't require it. Like Python doesn't require you to do all those concepts, but it does support a lot of it, and it'll make your code like way more efficient, that kind of thing.
So what do you think of Golang?
I have not actually done any programming in Golang personally. Anthony has been, like I mentioned at the beginning, has started developing an Empire implant for Go, so I'm sure I'm going to get pulled into the Go language shortly here. But I actually have personally not ever done anything in Go yet. I've also heard really good things about Rust, but I haven't done anything in Rust either. I've mostly been C#, Python, and then now we've been doing a lot of Iron Python stuff, which is interesting because the DOR, which is the dynamic language runtime, which is all of your I'm totally blanking on the term. They're not strongly typed languages like Iron Python, which is not a strongly typed language. It's the same thing. It has an entirely different compilation engine from the way the COR, which is like your traditional C# and all those kinds of things in .NET languages. And so there's a lot of interesting security research being done with the DOR. So I've been working a lot there, but yeah, my primary languages are Iron Python, C# and then PowerShell.
So where did you come up with the name BC Security?
Oh, so I mentioned at the very beginning that we started the company and put some crypto mining stuff underneath it. So at the time when we started the company was back in 2017, 2018 timeframe. Anthony and I had started doing some crypto mining. The military was not particularly friendly at the time to people like even owning cryptocurrency. So we were like, well, we'll go start a company and we'll put all of our mining equipment under there. And then if they ever ask about us, we'll be like, well, we don't own it. The company owns it. Kind of like trying to skirt the rules a little bit there. Like it wasn't a hard rule, but we're like, well, if we just separate it out, then like it'll be better for us. So we actually registered the company as Blockchain Security. And then when we went to go publish Empire after OffSec had come to us, like we can't call the company Blockchain Security. No one will keep us, will treat us seriously. And so we're like, well, what can we do? Like, well, we could do a name that's like a like doing business as type of thing. And you're allowed to like make abbreviations from your name and stuff without having to re-register the company. So like we'll call it BC Security. And Anthony came up with like, well, if we do that, then we can make like a caveman like our mascot like logo thing. I was like, that sounds like a great idea, and that's how we got to the BC Security name.
Very cool. I always wondered where that came from.
Yeah, it was one of those things like we have a friend that started a company, and it was also again like more of like a like side hustle type of thing that they never expected to like make it big with. Has become a fairly large company now, and when they made the charter as a joke, they made one of the guys like the vice president of janitorial services, but like all of their legal paperwork now has him as that, and it's like really expensive to try and go fix it. So he's just forever enshrined as the VP of janitorial services and all of their charter documents and stuff.
Oh, that's funny. So what do you think about all the AI stuff? Because this is a topic that comes up. So what are your thoughts on using AI for offensive security?
So we use it a lot as a like workflow enabler. I think it's worthwhile for use like that. There's no reason to be like, okay, I need to go write like a new C# server, like payload server or something, and try and write all the code from scratch. It's like I could figure it out. I don't have it all memorized because I'm not a full-time coder, but I could go pull up my old code examples and rewrite it, or I could go to like ChatGPT or something and just be like, hey, I want a basic HTTP server in C# and start using it from there. Another interesting thing is ChatGPT is actually really good at knowledge about the Win32 APIs, which is surprisingly difficult to find like cohesive documentation, like how is an API supposed to work, what is this API doing, especially once you get outside of like the super common ones like virtual alloc and get proc address, when you start getting into some of the more obscure ones. Like the Microsoft documentation is there, but it usually doesn't tell you a whole lot other than like you're supposed to give it 3 integers that are of the data type long, and that's like all it is. And it turns out that like there's a whole data structure underneath that you actually have to give like a specific long. And ChatGPT is really good at actually knowing what all those things are, because it is able to compile all those disparate pieces of data that by themselves are like really hard to find, but like once you correlate them all together, make it like a good write-up. It does have its limitations though. Like I've tried to use it for some Iron Python research stuff, and once you get out on kind of the more fringe like that kind of stuff, it just starts making stuff up and you're like, that's totally wrong, like stop doing that. So it has its place. Same with like a lot of I know the other thing that comes up along with the AI stuff is like a lot of the automated red team tools that have started coming out. Which I know some people are really against them. I don't have a major problem with them because they lower the cost of entry for a lot of middle and small sized businesses that just need to figure out how to deal with the low hanging fruit. There are companies that they'll go run the tool and they'll realize that even though they bought a bunch of, next gen firewalls, that they didn't even realize that 3 of their offices hadn't set up the firewall. And automated red teaming tools are really good for finding those kinds of baselines of like, where are we just failing? Or, they go set off and alerts go to their security person, and their security person just ignores them, because like this happened to us one time during a test where pulled a bunch of data off, and their system picked up the alerts, but their security person ignored it because it turned out like there were 2 or 3 employees that were pulling like gigs of data off every day to work from home, like before like people had made like the full cloud transition thing. And so their security person had just gotten used to like that always being like those 3 people and started ignoring the alerts. So the automated tools can find those kinds of things where you can actually take a baseline of like what was the real world indicators that we caught and those kinds of things, and the test is repeatable, which is another important thing for those small businesses. And they can actually go fix stuff because they can't afford for a $15, $20, $30,000 pen test to come in, because that was their whole security budget for the year. So just being able to get them something that is more accessible to them, I think, is really positive. They obviously have limitations. They're not, especially the stuff that's currently on the market. They execute in fairly linear fashion. They're not changing things. They're not seeing they were planning on going and executing, this is a super old reference, but an eternal blue pivot, and it turned out that they could have used something else that's less well known because the computer was also vulnerable to that. It doesn't diverge from any of its TTPs, so it can create bad training habits when you're repeating the same thing, because part of training against a real world adversary is that the real world adversary is dynamic. They don't repeat the exact same steps every time. And so they can't replace everything that a pen tester or a red team's doing, but it does create, like I said, that lower barrier of entry for a lot of companies that couldn't afford it previously, which I think is a very positive thing.
Very cool. So we're getting down towards the end of the show. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close it up?
No, thanks for having me on again. Looking forward to seeing everyone at DEF CON and Black Hat. We'll be out there. If it's okay for me to give a small plug, we're teaching 2 training courses. We're teaching our threat evasion course, which is a really cool course. It's my personal favorite. Evasion's like if you ever want to get me geeking out on stuff, we can talk about code obfuscation and evasion stuff. But it's focuses on managing like your strong and weak indicators of compromise when you're going into a network, and how those impact the responses that come from the SOC, and how to obfuscate your code to get rid of strong indicators, and then how to manage your weak indicators, like what domains you're using for your network traffic and that kind of stuff. And then we're also teaching an Active Directory course. It's being taught by Kevin Clark. He's super smart on that, probably one of the smartest people I've met on Active Directory personally. So that's another super cool course to go learn about all of the TTPs on how to kind of own a network without ever pivoting from a single computer. So just by, leveraging all of the trust issues within Active Directory and the objects and manipulation that you can do there.
Sounds awesome. So we can share those links in the show notes so people can find them easily.
Oh, awesome. That'd be great.
Yeah. As well as your BC security links and social media and stuff. So.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I'd close out with for anyone listening is come over to our Discord. We're super open to anyone that wants to get into the industry. We're happy to answer questions. If people are looking to get some training and maybe they can't afford budgets and stuff, we're always willing to work with people. So like we just want to help facilitate new people getting into the industry as best we can. So feel free to reach out to us and ask questions or anything like that.
Very cool. So thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to The Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter at Phillip Wylie. Until next time.